Hello, everybody. How we doing? No, the there. Thank you. Okay, just getting started for the Q&A, question and answer with Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, all the way from Boca Raton. Appreciate you joining on this beautiful Thursday night. Beautiful Thursday night. You know how it goes. You could comment questions down below over there, and we will ask Rabbi Goldberg and get some really good answers. So, really excited to be back with you guys. And let's just, jump right in. It's been too long.
Way too long, Nachi.
How are we doing, Rabbi Goldberg?
I am honored to be with the cover of Ami magazine. I texted Nachi. I said, remember the little guys? And honored and flattered and grateful to be back together. It's great to be here.
I appreciate it. I'm just trying to follow your lead, Just trying to follow your lead. How was Yontif by you? Everything good?
Yontif was good. A lot of rain, too much rain. But, this is the earliest that Sukkot falls on the calendar. This is a leap year, so it's the earliest before we put in that second Adar. So there was a lot of anticipation. It was going to be hot as anything in South Florida. And it was cooler than we all thought. So it was really nice. It was beautiful. Thank you. How was your Yontif?
Very nice. Thank God. No complaints. Baruch Hashem, it was beautiful. It was a crazy schedule. I feel like, wasn't in the office for a full month after Yontif Shabbos, but it's all good. It's all good. So let's just jump right in. I put you on the hot seat, and hopefully we'll keep you there for a little bit tonight.
Sure.
One of the questions that were sent in, and to everyone who's watching right now, feel free to put it in below in the question box, or you can comment it as well, and we'll get to it. How can rabbis of communities help with the Shidduch crisis? I know this is a topic that you have spoken a lot about, have written a lot about. Let's get right into it.
It's a funny thing because I'm not like Mr. Shidduchim. I don't know, I have some thoughts on it. I think most people do, and I've tried to articulate them and get them out there to start conversation, but I'm the farthest from the authority on it, and I don't want anyone to think that I think I have all the answers. My biggest issue with the Shidduch challenge is that I'm not sure who's driving some of the changes and developments that have happened in the Shidduch world. Not all of them, I think, that are positive, and the evidence of that is that things seem to, in some ways, be getting worse, not better. So,
right.
be it the level of interrogations, borderline inquisitions that have taken place now in trying to research potential shidduchim, be it the comprehensiveness of what are called the shidduch resumes. I prefer the word profile. I think even the use of the word resume suggests an interview, someone's qualifying for a job, someone has to prove their worthiness. The fact that references now include the potential boy or girl's friends, as if the friends who themselves we don't trust in their own shidduchim to make decisions themselves are now in a position to serve as references for others, and as if they're going to say things that others that are negative about the person they're being references for. They're enormous developments that I just don't think are very positive. And if I have to reduce a lot of it to the core, I would say it's the following. It used to be that many people who are making shidduchim were non-professional or voluntary sharchanim. They were average, regular people. So, Nachi, your parents had friends, you had friends, they know you, they heard of or met or know someone who knows someone else. They say to you, Nachi, I know this girl, I know you very well, I wouldn't suggest it to you if I didn't think it was good. You still had some questions. You still did some cursory research because you weren't going to jump right in based on their recommendation. But in the end of the day, they knew you. We now have an enormous world and a movement of people who don't know one another. And it's beautiful. I want to be very clear. The sharchanim are amazing, the professional and the volunteer. But they have stacks and piles of resumes. They're in all kinds of groups. They're throwing everything against the wall. They have what's called in the shidduch industry skirts and pants. This is a skirts and pants shidduch. In other words, she wears a skirt, he wears the pants. Hey, someone suggests that they should go out. So what happens is if you're on the other end of that, someone calls you a shadchan and they say, I have 5 people for you. They don't really know anything about the 5 people, and they can't name 5 things about you. Of course, now you're going to go interrogation style. So that is compromising and challenging the whole thing rather than helping it. Just as one example of something that could improve.
Right. I kind of feel that, like, this is just my personal opinion. I feel like it would be a huge service if the boys and the girls received, let's call it, profiles at the same time, simultaneously. If we put it in the, not just the boys can just sift through resumes / profiles and say, oh yes, this one, that one. And I know it's made this way to, I guess, sort of protect the girls from hearing no, but how much of a protection is it when a girl doesn't receive a resume for 6 months?
Right.
And this seems like a little bit, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's a problem. I think people not getting back to those who are trying to set them up. And I don't blame them. They have everyone throwing things at them. They're supposed to be getting back to them. It's also not simple. I think the pictures is a whole other separate conversation. The questions that are being asked are absurd. The real follow-up to that article that I wrote, that I haven't done but I'd like to, is to come up with a list of appropriate questions from Das Torah. I'm not Das Torah. Let's go to our Gedolei Yisrael. Let's go to the people who should be calling the shots, and let's have them come up with a list of appropriate questions, and then let's all agree we're only going to entertain questions on that list. Because I'll tell you a question someone told me recently. I didn't hear it directly. I heard it from someone who received this question. They tried to read a Shidduch, and they were asked the following. I'm embarrassed to repeat this. They were asked, the girl's mother, after she had her babies, how long did it take for her to lose her baby weight? Nachi, did you hear what I just said?
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Is that a normal world that we're in, where people are photoshopping pictures, taking...
For those who didn't, let's say, read the article, you spoke about some questions that are asked that are just like out of bounds. What are, I guess, a few examples? I mean, what the question you just said is like, I would hope that's an extreme, but what are a few other examples that, like, people can't be asking when you're making, inquiries?
Well, first of all, people ask me questions all the time. Baruch Hashem, as a Rav of a large shul, it's a great schus. I'm honored and grateful for the opportunity to participate in whatever way in trying to help. But they call, and I know they're working off a list that's not rabbinically approved. And some list goes around, and because you could tell they're working off a list. And they ask questions I could never know the answer to. I don't know what's in people's medicine cabinets.
Right.
I'm not the pharmacist. I don't work at the pharmacy. If I did, I have certain confidentiality. I'll often ask the person who asked that question, if I knew that about you, would you want me answering and repeating it? Would you want me disclosing it if I knew it about you? So questions about medicines. It's like a silly question. Has anyone asked the Rav ever, do you know if they're on any medications? Like, what am I supposed to say? Well, there's an ADD problem. They have some mild anxiety. I know they have some sugar issues, so they take this. They have high cholesterol. Like, what? They can't fall asleep at night, so they take melatonin. Like...
You're saying they should really call AMR Pharmacy if they have any medicine questions?
They should break in, get the files, and figure it out. Right. I haven't filed his tax returns. I have not, is the room... I've not been in the girl's room. I don't know if she keeps it clean. I don't know. Right. I can maybe ask her roommate that question, and she's also not going to be honest with you because she's not going to hurt or kill the shidduch. But I don't know the answer to that. So, and I'll tell you on the other end is that I do a fair amount of marriage counseling, and never, ever is the friction in shalom bayis in marriages anything that is asked pre the relationship. You want to know, you should ask, are they a mavater? Do they easily pass up on things, or are they somebody who needs it to be their way?
That wouldn't be, but I mean, who's to say someone would answer honestly about that either, though?
You're right. I don't know. I mean, the system is very flawed that I don't know if people are going to answer honestly about all these things. But I'll tell you, I answer honestly when there are, I think, legitimate questions. If there's something about the person, their personality, I'll say, let's say there's a boy or a girl who is socially awkward or has some quirkiness to them, I will answer and I'll say, here are all their milas, but you should know they have some quirkiness to them socially. And I want, because I don't want to say, yeah, they're amazing, they're great, everything. They go on the first date, the person sitting across from them, it's really socially awkward and weird. And, I called the rabbi, why didn't he say that? But there are ways of saying that somebody is a little quirky, or while they're amazing in A, B, C, and D way, they're a little shy, they're a little introvert, they're not necessarily as outgoing. There are ways to reveal aspects of a person's personality to make sure that there's some level of appropriateness for the shidduch that's being read without answering ridiculous questions that nobody should be answering, even if they know.
Right.
I'm not talking about somebody who I know, had a bipolar manic episode, was hospitalized, and they asked me, "Is there anything?" I said, "No, everything's good. They're mentally healthy." Are they mentally? But if I know somebody had that and they put me on their resume, I'll say to them, "I love you and I don't want to cause you pain. How are we agreeing to deal with, or do you have any hadracha on disclosing that episode, that experience, that fact in your life?" The father's been sitting in jail. The mother had this very public controversy. Okay, there has to be a conversation beforehand. But to just call people and go through my list of questions and feel like I checked it off and so on and so forth, it's not. And the reason I know it's not effective is you asked this question, meaning it wouldn't have been among the questions tonight if everything was honky-dory and flowing smoothly, and the fact that we've introduced all these new things have made the Shidduch and everyone's getting married left, right, and center. It's not working.
Oh, 100%. I don't know if it's a new thing, but it's getting a lot of attention, in this dar. Or
we've got to take it. We've got to take it, but we've got to reclaim it. Parents, say, I'm not going to give in to these parts of the process. The actual boys and girls have to say, I refuse to put my picture or give into this part of the process.
But where does that leave them? They might be the odd one out then. Well,
no,
everyone is playing the game.
That's why there needs to be a campaign and a movement. The campaign and the movement, there are many out there, and I'm not criticizing them. Some of them may be effective, some of them not. But I think the campaigns and movements are taking care of the symptoms. They're not going to the core, which is the illness, and put everyone in a room. Let's have a summit of shadchanim, some singles, some parents, and most importantly, some real Gedolei Yisrael Das Torah. And let's lay out, here are the challenges, here's the process, the way it's working right now. What should we remove from this process because it's not Al Pi Torah? By the way, Gedolei Yisrael have weighed in left, right, and center about the pictures, and nobody cares. And that's a perfect example. So who's really calling the shots? That's a whole separate conversation. In Klal Yisrael, who's calling the shots? It's a separate conversation.
It's a separate conversation, but that's very interesting. Who do you think is calling the shots?
Who's the agenda of Klal Yisrael? By the way, you know who it is? It's the editors of Mishpacha, Ami, Hamodia. In a good way, what they profile, what they cover, what they conversation at the Shabbos table, they're generating conversations. And they're doing a great job of it. I don't mean that as a criticism.
Are you saying, so you're saying ultimately the editors and the publishers of the main, I guess, mediums of media in the frum world are implementing more policy and trends than Das Torah?
But in some ways, I think they're doing a good job of trying to do it with Das Torah, by the way. And I have relationships with the editors of some of these. They actually have a rabbinic board. They ask for Piskei Halacha. They don't do things without approval. So they're doing a very good job of it. And fascinatingly, they get into, I'm sure, based on your cover, I'm still waiting for you to send me my copy with your signature, but I'm sure that you've got feedback from the modern world, the yeshivish world, because these magazines, by the way, are being dropped off and subscribed to and being picked up in supermarkets across the spectrum of the frum world.
Right.
I'll give you an example. The term "off the derech." You know where that conversation began when we first confronted it? The Jewish Observer, Allah Shalom, I don't know if it's masculine or feminine. The Jewish Observer magazine, our Goodest magazine, had a groundbreaking issue with a cover story several years ago, many years ago at this point, about the off the derech phenomenon. They broke the story. They said, let's talk about something no one's talking about because we need to talk about it. And now there are organizations and institutions, and now there's a whole world trying to address that issue. So it should be with the hadracha of Gedolei Yisrael, but too often it's not coming from the right place. It's coming from people with other vested interests in it who are the ones calling the shots.
That's super interesting. That really is. Reminding everybody on here right now, feel free to put a question in the question box. We're going to get to it, and I'm going to head into the question box right now. We are going to select one of these questions. Okay, this is an interesting one. Let's pull it up. How to be respectful to parents if they get annoying or they bother you about things. So let's sensationalize that question a little bit. I think the question really is how do you keep it of an aim if parent is difficult?
Which one of my kids sent in that question?
I think Leora.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Is that her name?
That is her name.
Wow, that's good. That was quick.
That's excellent. Excellent. She might be in Shidduch soon. That's excellent. So it's a great question, but there are different questions all in that question. So let's unpack it.
Okay.
Both deal with the question of, must you show kibbud av v'em to an abusive parent?
Okay.
Right? Let's start with the extreme. There's an abusive parent. Abusive can be physically, chas v'shalom, emotionally, spiritually, verbally. There's all forms of abuse. If there is an abusive parent, I don't mean like the parent says, clean your room, and the kid's
Right.
like, my parent's abusive, I'm calling police, I'm publishing a book, I'm calling them out, whistleblower. I don't mean they say clean the room and now you're an abusive parent. I mean somebody who, a clinician would categorize this as an abusive parent. And the post can very clearly say that while you need to be as respectful as you can, if you withdraw from that relationship in order to preserve your mental, physical, emotional health, halachically, not only can you, but you should. You should.
Right.
The parent is abusive. They're interfering in a way that's compromising your life. They're hurting your marriage. They're hurting your children, and so on and so forth. Again, it's a very slippery slope. I don't mean that, one day you don't like the way they inserted themselves when you said, isn't it cold? The baby should really be wearing a blanket. My parent's abusive. I have to not go to them for Yantif. I'm talking about, so that's the most extreme. An abusive parent, the halach is clear. You are entitled, and arguably you should create boundaries and withdraw and even not be in contact in the extreme if that's what's necessary. But what if parents have unfair demands? Poskim, their famous chuvas that deal with the following question. Someone's dating. Let's overlap it with the last question. You're dating, and the parent says, I don't like this for you. Don't marry them. Do you have to listen to your parent? If your parent says, don't marry that person. Halachically, it's a mitzvah kibbud av v'em. It's a whole sugya, not for now. Right? Mishalav, Mishal Ben, how far do you have to go? What do you have to give up yourself to do it? There's lots of so there's a lot of chuvas about it. Goes back even earlier. And again, the psak is that no, parents should be enormous influence in our life. We want, and by the way, for any parents listening, be very careful how you give feedback about who your child is dating, because it's possible they will marry them anyway, and they will always know that my parent doesn't like them, didn't want me to marry them. So be very careful. That doesn't mean that you're not entitled or responsible to share your feedback, but be very measured and careful how you do it, because they can marry them anyway, and then they will always remember the position that you had.
Right.
But let's talk about, let's go to the other extreme, right? Parents who are mildly annoying. So I don't know if there's a child who doesn't have parents who have idiosyncrasies or things that are annoying.
It's their job.
I'm a parent, and I'm sure my children would say that, and they wouldn't be wrong about some of the things that I do, and we can all learn, including parents. But there, I think a child has to realize that parents gave me life, support my life, sustain my life, protect my life, and they're good to me. And so there are things that I bear, that I'm a mevater, I'm maver al amidos, that, I wish they didn't say that or insert themselves here. So either I can allow that to escalate. My mother-in-law gave an opinion about my recipes, or about whether my child's wearing a coat with the weather outside, or about how I run my Shabbos table, or about whatever that they had no right to say, or that they didn't say in the nicest way. So do I escalate that, or do I let it go? And do I focus on the parts of the relationship, or the virtue in the other person that I can connect, that I can nourish, that I can enjoy that part of the relationship? So I think the two extremes are the sort of say easiest part. The one who's abusive, you're entitled to withdraw. And the one who mildly is just a normal parent that has idiosyncrasies and has annoying parts to them, we as children need to recognize and stay focused on the bigger picture and the greater good, and maintain that kibbud av v'em, and not allow things to escalate, work on our own midos, be mevatel, be mevater, be mavir, and so on. It's the middle gray, which gets very, very complicated, how to navigate. And I've had several meetings with people, trying to think out loud with them and dictate to them what to do. I very recently had such a meeting, and it often centers around, usually these meetings are right after a Yantif, whenever we're together. Before a Yantif or after a Yantif is when the majority of these meetings take place. And it's in that middle ground that it needs to be navigated. And again, the thing is, don't react emotionally, don't react impetuously, do it strategically and thoughtfully, and with a Rav, with a therapist, with a Rav. Say, here are the issues, here's the personality type, what is the best way to deal and to navigate?
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Moshe Tischler. This is coming off tomorrow, I think. A question that I guess it's similar to this topic before we move on. If trying to repair a relationship with your sibling will cause your parent pain, is it usher to do so? Now, that's an interesting question, I imagine. I wonder if there's an answer. I mean, I'm sure there is.
Meaning, is the parent entitled, put differently, is a parent entitled to tell one child they can't have a relationship with another? Halachically, is a parent entitled to do that? So again, I think here it all depends on why the parent. In other words,
well, let's say the parent got into a fight with one of the children, something petty, like whatever, something small, nothing that society would deem, reprehensible or whatever.
Right. So I think it really all depends on what it is. Sometimes the parent says that we have a child who's a negative influence, who's involved in certain substances or behaviors, and both for that child's own good, we need to practice tough love, and to protect you, we need to practice some tough love and create some distance. Then maybe the parent's not doing it emotionally or doing it out of their own honor or ego. It again is a parent's hadracha maybe they received of what they're doing for the good of that child who's struggling and for their siblings to be protected. And then might be legit the parent to ask that child to be part of that team, that intervention strategy. But other times, if a parent's being petty with a sibling and they're trying to use you as a pawn in their petty fight, then I don't think halachically they would be entitled to do it, although the child needs to be smart and not rubbing it in the parent's face that they are maintaining that relationship. The common denominator to all these questions is don't try to figure it out on your own. They're complicated. We have a world of mental health professionals who are experts. We have hadracha of Talmidei Chachamim who can take the Torah's perspective. And if one is doing it in guidance, then it's the best way to do it. Our rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avos, mar be'etza, mar be'tfuna. The more advice that we seek, the more wisdom that we have. Sometimes people have shame. They don't want to tell anybody. So they're trying to figure it out on their own. Sometimes people have guilt, or sometimes people just don't want to bother. They just react the way that they want. It's critically important to engage mar be'etza, mar be'tfuna. Use the resources, use the wisdom, and get the guidance.
Right. Let's transition into, I think, another interesting topic, which is the stigma surrounding, let's say, therapy. I think that perhaps it has gotten less over the years, but do you think from where you sit, from where you stand, that there still is a stigma surrounding those who seek help, therapy? Let's say someone in Shidduchim is found to be going to therapy. Is that all of a sudden, oh my gosh? Will it ever become not an oh my gosh? Is it like, listen, it's 2020, it's 2021. It's like, come on, get with it. It's totally fine. It's normal. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are very clear. I don't even think there's anything to have to think about here. Should there be a stigma around going to, if you have heart disease, should you not go to the cardiologist? If you have bowel disease, should you not go to the gastroenterologist? And if you have mental health disease, should you not go to the doctor who's been trained, who's researched and data? And the evidence of this is that there's an entire world within the Torah world that are expertise in this. There's an organization called Nefesh, which is the organization of mental health professionals. Rav David Cohen Shlita, the Gvoyevitz, is the posek of that organization. Rav Asher Weiss has tshuvas in Minchas Asher about people with OCD and how to observe halacha. So there should be no stigma. There should be stigma around people who do not go to mental health professionals when they need to. That's the only place that there should be stigma. And again, because we always come back to the Shidduch, and I'll come back there. So what's better? What's a better answer? Someone says, Rabbi, they call Rabbi, and they want to know, are there any issues? And I say, yeah, that child had some mild anxiety in high school. They had a mental health professional, and they're doing fantastically. They're healthy. They're going to make a great spouse. They're great. And then they call about the other person. They go, no, as far as I know, they don't see a therapist, but they really need to. They're really, really messed up. And their behavior, conduct, and their personality type, and they don't. So there are people in the effort to not hurt Shidduchim will not get the help that they need. And then when it comes out? It comes out the night after the last Sheva brachas is when it comes out. So there should only be a stigma for the people who need help, who don't get it.
Let that sink in a bit for the Ilam. Heading back into the question box again, those who want to ask any questions to be answered, just submit a question. One of the questions I see here were, where was this article written by Rabbi Goldberg? Rabbi Goldberg, that was in Mishpacha magazine, correct?
Are you allowed to say that?
As long as there's no woman on this live, I think we could.
There you go. Yeah, it was called Mishpacha magazine. If you Google my Mishpacha or Shidduch, I'm not sure it will come up. It's not the authority. It's not the answer to everything. It's entertaining. If you can't fall asleep on Friday night, print out the article.
It's definitely thought-provoking, and I think, that the article that you wrote led to probably the most letters to a singular article that I've ever seen. Like, you wrote that article, and then the next, 15 weeks, it's just been letters discussing that topic. And it's a real hot-button issue. It affects every single family in Klal Yisrael. No joke.
What that tells you is that people are finding they're not happy with the system, and they're grateful to have an opportunity or a springboard to have that conversation. And
right.
Again, I think these magazines are doing a great job of it, but who and where and how, people sitting down and saying, what are the Klal Yisrael issues, and let's talk about it.
Right.
For example, and I'm going to win some points with my wife right now, is lace top shaitos really the top of the Klal Yisrael issues? I'm not telling you a position on a good, but if name in Tufshin Pei Beis, the challenges that Klal Yisrael are struggling with through COVID, through behaviors, through marriages, shalom bayis, through chinuch, through off the derech, through mental health, that make it who chose let's make that the top. So
probably someone who writes headlines for Yeshiva World. I don't know.
Right, around what table is that decision being made? What are the Klal Yisrael topics that we should be generating conversation around?
Transitioning to another interesting topic. This is one that I find my heart is very near and dear to. Something that bothers me a little bit, being in this world of media. Oftentimes, there's something that happens, an event, a tragedy usually, and what comes to follow is graphic images, breaking news with body bags, children davening over in graves. I find that to be a tremendous issue. I think I've spoken to somebody who says that after Meron, this person was from, the tri-state area, that their 11-year-old couldn't go to sleep at night because they just had the images of body bags. I think it does a tremendous disservice that in the from media world, it's so normal to just be posting in images and videos that are just too much. What's your take on that? And is there a way that you see that it can be fixed?
I'm so grateful that you brought that up, because I don't know that I've ever thought about that. And I think it's a really, really important point. Thank you for bringing that up. My answer to that is, we are assimilated Jews. There was an article of Meir Tversky, Shlita, wrote about we are assimilated Jews, where his point was that you could learn the daf and daven with them 3 times a day, and you could keep all the chumras in the world, but let's not deny that we're still assimilated in many ways, that what's happening in the world around us seeps in and impacts us in big ways. And this might be a perfect example of it, that we're living in this world of sensationalism. We're living in a world of a news cycle and headlines. We're living in a world that's competing to try to capture an audience and a following. And that's all what's driving those pictures and those headlines. And again, is it being done with Das Torah? Were there a group of poskim who sat down and we asked, when we want Klal Yisrael to feel the pain of a Miron or a tragedy, is the legitimate way to try to get them to feel pain to post these pictures, or are there intended consequences and maybe we shouldn't? Who's deciding that? Or is it decided by people who say, we want the most clicks so we could sell the most advertising, so we could be the most popular, so we could be the biggest? So how are those decisions being made? And this is a perfect example. I'm not even saying I know which way the decision should be made. One could argue that the more dramatic and sensationalized that we are, the more people will write checks to tzedakah, the harder they'll daven, the bigger the difference will make. One might argue.
I think it's not mutually exclusive. I think it could be true that someone wrote over here that no, we need to see it, we need to feel the pain, and I'm assuming that means when you feel the pain, we'll be able to daven more. But at what cost? At what expense? Our sanity?
Right. You're raising that issue. You're raising what's about the kid who can't sleep anymore. I'm worried about something else, which has happened in the general media world, which is there'll come a point that you're sipping your coffee or you're eating your sushi and you see dead Jews, body bags, a collapsed building, and you're able to keep eating or sipping and go, oi, nebuch, and then scroll to the next story.
Right. Ultimately, people get desensitized. It's bound to happen. Now,
it will happen, right? How you talking that a Jew could see the body bag of another Jew or read a tragedy and continue the lunch, take the next sip of coffee? So you're right. That is an unintended consequence of these images that maybe will be desensitized. So the point again is, and then I've got to run because I was taught always leave them wanting more. So we're at our 30-minute mark. Sure. But the tzad hashava, I think, of all of our conversations are who are calling these shots, who are making these decisions. How can we make sure that we're not being driven by ulterior motives, which we all are in every aspect of life when we are promoting, and you and I do a decent job of trying to promote because we're trying to get a message out, but we also need rebbeim, and we also need pushback, and we also need people who say meaningful minute, Goldberg, BRS, whatever it is, hey, you've crossed the line, you have good intent, but here's an unintended consequence of it. So I think that we need to continuously revisit, and we, Klal Yisrael, need to demand more that the right people are making these decisions, having these conversations, and coming to the right conclusions before we wake up after the fact. Because what will happen in Asifa in 10 years, that, we've been desensitized, we no longer cry, these tragedies. After the fact, it'll be a lot harder to undo than it would be to stop it when it's happening in real time.
Rabbi Goldberg, I really look forward to picking up on this point, because I think there's a lot to unpack here. I look forward to picking up on this next week. Yeshiva World News 2, I know you agree. Thank you for agreeing. Let's make some change, guys. Let's make some change. Anyways, everyone who joined, thank you so much. Make sure to follow Meaningful Minute. Make sure to follow Rabbi Efrem Goldberg on Instagram. And we will see you again next week. Everyone have an amazing Shabbos.
Have a great Shabbos, everyone. Take care.